All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to the IACS Professional Development Program. I'm Kathleen Flint M. I'm an Assistant Dean in the Graduate School here at Stony Brook. And I oversee our professional development unit within the graduate school. So that includes, I'm also the director of the Office of Postdoctoral Affairs, and I also oversee external graduate fellowship advising. And today we're going to be talking about sort of overall career planning, which is, I think I need to even come up with a better phrase than that one of these days. Basically, we're going to be talking about why doing some self-reflection and writing down some goals for yourself is a great way to keep yourself on track in grad school. It's a great way to remind yourself why you're in grad school. And it's a great way to make sure that you're doing all those things that we know we should be doing to give us our best bet to be able to orient our CV and our resume in the best way to make sure that we have the best chance of going wherever it is we want to go when we leave Stony Brook in our next career step. And so just a tiny little bit about me. So I am a PhD astronomer by training. So once upon a time, I was going through this sort of thing when I was a graduate student, except we actually didn't have like cool career planning workshops and stuff like that. We had to like use those self-help books like the What Color Is Your Parachute book to kind of figure out where we were going and how to keep ourselves on track. And so a lot of this is stuff I have since learned. I guess I've been working on postdoctoral policy and broader professional development for graduate trained scholars for almost 20 years now. So ever since I first sort of left the academic career path as a postdoc. And so a lot of what we're talking about today are really kind of the cutting edge of best practices in terms of career development for graduate students and for postdocs, although I think we're all graduate students here today, right? So let's see. So just a quick show of hands. How many, do we have any master students here? If you want to raise your virtual hand or your physical hand, or, drop me an emoji from the reactions. How many master students are here? Any? Okay. PhD students? Okay. So most of us, all of us, maybe? Okay. Are there any postdocs here? Just to see. Okay, I got one extra hand there, I think. Did I see that? I didn't wait long enough. Okay, great. All right, well, thank you, everyone. You can lower your hands now. Just trying to get a sense of who's in the room with us today. So let me pop up my slides. Okay, and let me put all of you into gallery mode so I can see everybody a little bit better. There we go. Okay. I have to be a little bit flatter for see everybody. There we go. Okay, good. So, so some of what we're going to talk about today is part of a longer workshop that I do every semester called Planning Your Path to a Satisfying Career. The folder, of course, that I keep everything in is actually called something simple like IDP workshop, where an IDP is a kind of standard tool in career development that we use these days for grad students and for postdocs. It stands for an individual development plan, an IDP. It's a little bit of a mouthful. And the basic idea is it gives you a chance to reflect on your goals and to set some what we call SMART goals, like what are going to be your action items for yourself just for this calendar year to make sure that you're keeping yourself on track. And part of the reason that we talk about planning is because the psychology literature on planning tells us that if you write it down, you're far more likely to actually do it. So that's basically the idea right there in a nutshell. Is usually we have all of these great plans in our head and we're thinking about them and we're sort of background processing them. But if you actually give yourself some dedicated time to sit down, write down some goals, refer back to them in a year, it'll give you a higher chance of following through on those things. And so just real quick to begin, let me get my chat open up. I ask everybody just to reflect for a second, when you first applied to grad school, why did you decide to come to grad school? What was it for? What drove you here? And if you wouldn't mind just sort of dropping it in the chat, like just in a few words, like what was your original goal in coming to grad school? Anybody willing to share? I hadn't learned what I wanted in undergrad to get my PhD. Love for applied maths. I wanted to learn more. So taking your learning to the next level, gaining extra skills, gaining a degree, be able to do research, do field work, collecting data, analyze it and ask questions, to expand and use those skills for our particular career path, right? Becoming a licensed clinical psychologist. Yeah, and so in thinking about what brought us to grad school, that's kind of in a nutshell, again, what it is we're going to do today is that I encourage you all to keep that goal in mind. Right? It's so easy for us to lose sight of the reason that we came to grad school and what it is we wanted to get out of it. And you're going through your classes, you're teaching every single day, you're writing, fellowship proposals, writing papers, whatever all those things are. We get super busy, right? And at the end of the day, we know it's not like applying for jobs and thinking about your career is like the funnest thing you're going to do that day. I work on this stuff and I can fully recognize that. But we're putting so much time and effort into this, pretty long process. And so being able to kind of keep your eye on the light at the end of the tunnel and remind yourself while you're here and can help you stay on track, but it can also remind you that, what are those extra things that you could be doing along the way to make sure that you're going to get that thing out of grad school, whatever that was. And so a quote about this that I appreciate, and I was thinking about this the other day because this used to be like actually in my email signature when I was in grad school. So I guess I actually was thinking about planning then, even though I wasn't going to workshops like this. And it's a quote from the Roman senator Seneca the Younger from 65 AD, and it's translated in different ways, but the translation that I like is, our plans miscarry because they have no aim. When a man does not know what harbor he is making for, no wind is the right wind. And so this is why we're talking about making a plan. Now, a plan is not going to be something set in stone, concrete, confining, right? The idea is more for you to kind of reflect on where you're going and then keep touching back to that plan and changing the plan when you need to. But it's going to help you know where you're going, because if you don't know where you're going, it's harder to get there, right? And in particular, we're going to talk about careers and career plans in this sense, right? So what do I mean when I say a career plan? So some of the things that it can help you do is it can help you explore satisfying careers. It can help you identify and build the skills that you need for the careers that you're interested in. And it can help you set and meet goals, whatever those goals of yours may be. And, and as I just mentioned a few slides back, right, writing down a plan makes it more likely you will actually achieve those goals. But an additional thing, and I think that this has become more timely in the past couple of years for all of us, is that having a plan can make you more nimble in uncertain times, right? So I think that probably none of us could have ever predicted that we'd be going through a global pandemic. And I'm sure that it impacted all of you and your research careers and your plans for grad school, probably the progress in school. It has probably raised question marks about what a job market looks like in during and post-pandemic. And having a plan means that you've sort of thought through it in advance, and it can help you pivot if you need to, if things suddenly change in a way that you didn't expect. So when I talk about an IDP, again, I'm talking about an individual development plan. And I kind of like to think of it as a written annual, like your personal annual strategic plan, right? But the strategic plan for you and your development. So it typically includes your long and your short-term career goals. And then it includes some steps to help prepare you to reach those goals. And again, you write it down, you might actually do it. The other reason that we talk about IDPs a lot more than we used to is because for those of you, if any of your research, and I know one of you mentioned becoming a licensed clinical psychologist, if you end up becoming funded by the NIH at any point, the NIH expects all funded trainees to have an IDP in place. But that's not to say that the IDP is a biomedical science thing. It's just that NIH has the most money and can tell the most people what to do. And that's why people started doing IDPs, but it's really a general model that can help us in any discipline. And in fact, it's actually something that was really started in the private sector that we adapted for graduate students and for postdocs, sort of back in the mid 2000s or so. And even though it's when I say requirement, the way the policy is written by NIH, it expects institutions to report that the trainees have them, but it's basically a requirement. But despite the fact that it is a policy expectation, there's no one way to do an IDP, right? And so, in fact, what the IDP is really is just, it's a process of reflection, identifying skills, doing professional development, and making reasonable, smart goals to achieve that. That's really what an IDP is, but there's lots of different ways to actually achieve that. So this is just a quick, very high level overview of all the ways that you can IDP. There are a lot of ways now that you can just do it on your own, at your own pace online. The most well-known is something called My IDP. It's hosted at Science Careers. Science is the publisher of the journal Science. The American Chemical Society has one that's actually pretty slick as well. It's called chemidp.org. Some of our faculty here in the chemistry department were actually part of that development. And then there's a new one that was designed specifically for the social sciences and the humanities called Imagine PhD that I've even heard from STEM students have found it quite useful. So you might check some of these tools out. Another way that you can go about it is you can join a workshop. So as I said, I do this Planning Your Path to a Satisfying Career workshop every semester. The next one is going to be on October 19th at 3 o'clock. And it's a way to sort of sit down with a bunch of your peers in 2 hours, knock out a first draft of an IDP. And that's just one way. There's lots of other workshops from, your professional societies do these things. Your departments may do them. You may run into them in other venues as well. And then there are also some courses or programs that you can participate in that can help you. So the one, of course, I know the best is my program, the PhD Career Ladder Program, or PCLP, we call it. I'll talk about it a little bit at the end of my remarks, but it's it's basically a semester-long 0-credit way to do an extended IDP process where you meet every other week for 7 steps. And it takes you through some of the fundamentals of career development, but together in a group with other students. So you're actually in a peer-led group led by another graduate student who takes you through the curriculum. And then the Career Center has been building out some classes around this too that are led by their staff. They have career planning. I believe they also have like a designing your life class now as well. It's CAR 5 something else, 65, 5 something else. I forget the number, I'm afraid. So there's lots of ways in order to do more of this after this workshop. But again, when it comes back to the basics, it's an IDP is actually very simple, right? It's you do some self-assessment, you do some career exploration and professional development, and you do some goal setting. And ideally, this whole process is iterative. So once a year, then you'll come back and you'll reflect. Did I hit my goals that I set for last year, right? Where am I now? What are my new needs? What are the new things I'm going to do this year to keep myself on track? So let's think a little bit more about self-assessment. I'm going to pause right here and see, are there any questions? And again, please feel free to like raise your hand or drop a question in the chat or just unmute and stop me if I haven't seen you. Any questions? Nope. Okay. So when we think about self-assessment, which sometimes doesn't sound like all that much fun, but the basic idea behind it is just sort of reflecting on what are your interests, what are your values, what are your skills, and how do you look at the points that are sort of at the intersection of those three, which ideally are the types of careers that you're interested in or that you want to pursue. Increasingly, we're also talking about an additional component, which is how do your skills, your interests, and your values also intersect with your purpose? Okay, so what do I mean by purpose? So by one definition, your purpose is an abiding intention to achieve a long-term goal that is both personally meaningful and makes a positive mark on the world, right? So I think a lot of us sometimes, even looking at some of your responses here, some of us came to grad school in some fashions. A lot of the research that we do is perhaps about leaving a positive mark on the world, changing your field, changing the way things are done, expanding knowledge. And I think it's good to sort of keep sight of that, of what is it that gives you purpose as you're thinking about these other components of your career. So, in thinking about your interests, skills, and your values, you can go from what do I want to do, and you can flip that into asking the question of more, maybe where am I needed when you're thinking about your career? So for example, instead of what am I interested in, you could ask yourself, what or who do I care about? Or what problem can I help solve? Instead of just thinking about what skills do I like to use, you could ask, what capacities can I offer to contribute to the good of others? And instead of just asking, what do I value? You can ask, what ultimately matters and what is worthwhile for you. I also encourage you to maybe even take this a step further in thinking about your research. This is a book that I highly recommend to all of our PhD students, particularly as you're thinking, those of you that might be at the sort of dissertation or project design phase. It's a book called Where Research Begins, and it has a lot of really great exercises. It's actually a workbook that you can work along with. And it helps you think about the research and the kinds of questions that you want to work on in the context of sort of your larger purpose, your larger values, and how that might intersect with what the world needs as well, right? So you could ask yourself, what research topics or questions are of interest to you, which groups or communities would care about the outcomes of this research, What is your ideal research outcome or impact on the world? Once you get to the end of it, what are you hoping to do? What impact are you hoping to have? So we're going to do just a quick exercise. And I know nice thing about Zoom, you're all on computers already. So, as you're watching my slides, they might have maximized to take up your entire monitor, your entire laptop. I encourage you to go up, if you mouse up at the top and you click on the menu, you can actually ask it to, you can stop it from being full screen and actually have access to your computer. Or you could literally just, pick up a piece of paper or a Post-it that's next to your desk. And I want you to think about these questions and jot down one thing for yourself. So think about, and this is about you, so you're the I in this sentence, right? So what am I interested in? What or who do I care about? Or what problem can I help solve? So just on a piece of paper next to your computer, try to just jot down one thing. What's something that interests you or that you're passionate about, right? So you might think, like, what's your favorite task at or aspect of the work or school? Maybe think about your response to the question of why you came to grad school. Maybe think about what your research is about, or maybe think about like, what's an important hobby of yours, or how or on what you spend your personal time. So whatever that thing might be, what is it that you're interested in, right? And just jot down one thing. It doesn't have to be all the things you're interested in, just the one that most easily comes to mind. And I'll give you, I'll give you about a minute. Okay. Now you have 20 seconds. Okay, does anybody need more time? No? Okay. All right, so let's go on to the next question. Next, what I say skills do I like to use, but let's just think about one skill, that one skill that comes to mind. Think about what skills I like to use, what capacities can I offer to contribute to the good of others? And here's just a tiny, tiny smattering of some of the skills that I hear grad students and postdocs talk about in my workshops. But when you're thinking about this skill, sometimes when we think about self-assessment, we think about like evaluating our skills and thinking about what are the things that I'm good at versus bad at. And honestly, I don't even care the things that you're bad at, right? Let's just throw those out the window and let's think about what are the skills that you like doing or that you want to get better at, right? If it's something that you're not good at and you don't need it and you don't want to get better at it because it's not relevant to you, don't even worry about it and let's just not even think about it. But instead, what's that one skill that you think is really important that you're good at or that you want to focus on? And jot that down on your piece of paper as well. Right. And if you're having trouble thinking of what that one is, maybe, maybe think to like, has your advisor maybe given you a compliment recently? Is there something that you were doing that made you feel really energized when you did it? Like, You get to the end of it and you're like, heck yeah, I'm awesome when I did that, whatever that thing was. And then think about what skill you were using when you did that. Okay, everybody good? Okay, all right, let's go on to the next one. All right, so final question. What do I value? What ultimately matters to me and what is worthwhile? Right, so this is something that I think we internalize and sometimes might be harder to articulate what our values are. So I've just thrown some here at the bottom of my slide that are from a longer worksheet that I use for some of my workshops. But like when you think about the work that you do, or you think about your job, or you think about your day-to-day life, what are the things that are important to you in that work? Is it working in a team? Is it being challenged? Is it always having sort of variety and working on something different? Is it working on something that's risky and cutting edge? Or is it having security and stability? Is it leading others? Is it supporting others? Being in a structured environment or having lots of flexibility? And sometimes I know it's really hard to pick just one. So on this one, if there's a couple that totally speak to you, go ahead and jot down a couple, but don't jot them all down. Sometimes it's a little too easy to think that like, well, we want all the things, but there are ones that are the most important to you. So I'll give you a minute for that. Okay. All right, so set that piece of paper aside right now, and we're just going to talk briefly about these two other steps. So once you've gone through a self-assessment process similar to this one, right, really thought about the things that are really important to you, now it's a chance to sort of do some career exploration. Think about the careers you're interested in, maybe the ones you've always had as your target. Maybe there are some that might fulfill sort of the intersection right there between your interests, your values, your skills, and your purpose. And, think about what those careers are. Like, a nice thing about a process like this is we all came into grad school with a particular career goal. Sometimes that career goal shifts or changes fundamentally during the course of graduate school. A process like this is a chance for you to kind of set all those previous expectations aside and really think about what is the stuff that you love to do the most, right? And how can we pursue a path that's going to keep us doing those things and building the skills that are the most meaningful for us? And and in thinking about those careers, if there's ones that you don't know that much about, how can you learn more about them? How can you learn about the skills that are needed so you can build those skills as well? And perhaps most importantly, how can you document the skills that you have towards those careers so that you can put them on your CV, you can talk about them knowledgeably when you go through an interview, and be able to be a strong candidate both on paper and in person. So once you've thought about that and sort of thought about where it's all taking you, then you can move into goal setting, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But first, we are going to go into some breakout rooms. So I'm just going to pair you up randomly with another partner or another participant. And if you want to take a super quick screenshot of this slide, because these are the 3 questions that I want you to think about, which is when you go into your breakout rooms, introduce yourself to your partner if you don't know each other already. And then to the extent that you're comfortable, share what you wrote down for the first 3 questions. So your interests, your values, and the skill that is the most important to you right now. So share what those are, and then have a quick conversation with your partner about what are some of the careers that lie at the intersection of those skills, interests, values, and purpose for you. And go through this exercise as a team for both of your answers to these questions. And so think about what are some careers that lie at the intersection? What can you do to learn more about these careers? And how can you prepare yourself or document that you have expertise towards these careers? Whoops. So does everybody understand what I'm asking? I'm going to drop the questions in the chat because then it'll be persistent for you, or it will persist for you when you go into a breakout room. All right, everybody ready? So I think I'll give you, probably going to give you about 8 minutes to talk, and then we'll all come back to the main room. All right, I'm going to create the rooms now. Haha, looks like I lost somebody already. And I think one of you will be in a room with 3. Okay. Your rooms are open. Yuntine, are you here? All right, welcome back, everybody. Nobody came back to the last possible second, so I assume that because everybody was still talking. Yeah, was it a good discussion? Yeah. Awesome. So is anybody willing to, just to share a little bit about maybe any of the careers that they talked about, or any interesting ways you thought about learning more about them or building skills?
I can share.
Awesome. Thank
So
you.
I was with Claire and we're actually in the same lab. And so she just like popped in, but like, I thought it was interesting that, so like for me, we both like said like helping people and helping society as like a big part of our research. And we work like very closely on the same research project. But we have like very, I shouldn't say like hugely different like ideas for future career paths, but I thought it was interesting how we do a lot of the same types of things. And Claire is very interested in like teaching, and maybe research will be in there if it works out, but like teaching is like her big thing. And then on the other side, like I'm wanting to do research, but like very doubting that I want to do an academic type of, so more like industry research or like national lab research. So I thought that was very interesting that we do a lot of the same types of things and we have the same like values and goals, but we have very different ideas for how those play into our future like careers.
Oh, that's fantastic. And I think that's the perfect example of the fact that many of us are going through the exact same training at some level, right? But that how that manifests for you is going to be totally unique to you, right? Which is hopefully why, some of this reflection is helpful. So let's see. So what's something you can do to document that you're awesome at teaching? Anyone?
Asking? Okay.
Yeah, anyone. What's something you can do to document that you're a great teacher? I'm picking on Claire's interest, right? But I think a lot of us have thought about this too.
Positive student feedback.
Yeah, if you get feedback from having been a TA, right? So think about ways in which you can build those skills, or sometimes if you're like, depending on the type of job you're applying to, right? If you're writing a teaching statement for that job, you can talk about your student evaluations, right? You can summarize them, the things that they said about you. That's a great way to document that you're good at teaching, right? What else could you do?
If you feel like your students regularly communicate with you versus just like being afraid of ever speaking to you or emailing you, that's a big like indicator that you're doing a good job.
Yeah, no, absolutely it is. And, and some things to think about, if it's something I like to think about is this question of like, do you like what you're good at, or are you good at what you like? And I encourage you all to try to find a way that both are the same thing, right? And that's why I like to focus on the skills that we want to build, right? So if I'm interested in going towards a teaching career, I'm good at it. How can I also get better? How can I get more experience? How could I maybe take the online teaching certificate program from CELT, and then I could say that I have a certificate in online teaching, and I could put that on my resume, right? And again, I'm not singling you out, Claire. I'm using teaching as an example because I think so many of us have thought about teaching as a career, right? And that's just a great example. Like CELT has tons of these classes, but like a certificate like that, it's a badge that shows up on LinkedIn, right? It's a way to, you put it on your CV and then you go through an interview and someone's like, oh, so tell me about this certificate program that you did, blah, blah, blah. And you can say, oh, well, and now you have these really concrete things to talk about in order to tell that person why you're the best one and why they should hire you. So for all the things that you talked about in your groups, think about those value added, those extra things you can do, right? Whether it's, you're interested in giving great presentations or being a researcher, or that requires presentations. Did you ever get a poster award at your professional society that you could put on your CV, or travel grants to go do field work wherever you may go, or I have a professional development program where you can get money that a lot of students have taken, like Coursera courses, in order to build their skills in a new way that might be relevant to their career path. Which just reminded me that actually I haven't promoted it at all, and you're all the first to know. The PhD Works Awards are actually live again this year. So if there's anything you're interested in doing this semester that broadens your career horizons outside of the traditional career goal in your field for your training, which is a really long way of saying that, like, if you're a PhD student, the traditional career goal is probably getting a tenure track faculty job. If you're interested in doing other things and there's something you can do to help prepare you for that other thing that's not your dissertation work and it's not a faculty job, you can get up to, I think it's $750 to pay for that thing this semester. So you should check out my website. I don't remember what the link is, but I'll drop it in the chat once I remember it. It's in the professional development section of the grad school website under PhD Works. But anyway, thank you both, Carol and Claire, for sharing. Does anyone else want to chime in with something they talked about super fast? A career or a skill building activity they talked about? So Ram says, when students can acknowledge that they can understand what you're trying to teach. Oh, right. Yes. As part of the teaching conversation. Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you all for engaging in that activity right now. And we're going to move on to the next step that I want you to do is that, so again, thinking about this IDP process. So we did some reflection. We thought about careers and we thought about some ways to build skills. And then you want to set yourself some goals, right? And when we say goals, I like to think of it as like an action plan, right? But you want the things that you write down on your action plan to be SMART, which of course is a cutesy acronym, right? So when I say SMART, what I mean is that you want your goal to be specific. You want it to be measurable. You want it to be action-oriented, realistic, and time-bound, right? So an example of a goal that is not SMART is like, I'm going to cure cancer, right? So it's not very specific. You're going to cure all the cancers. It's not really measurable. How can you really measure easily that you've cured all of the cancers and it's clear? It is pretty action oriented, but it's also kind of vague because what are the steps you need to do in order to cure it? It's, I would say, unfortunately, not realistic to do in a 1 year time scale. And it doesn't tell me when you're going to be done, right? So when I say time bound, giving yourself a goal that's like, in the next 6 months, I am going to, start eating more apples whenever I go to lunch, right? Or something like that. Like, in 6 months, whether you've done it or not. So give yourself a timeline for that. All right. So you want it to be specific. What's the really specific doable thing you can do in the next year? By when do you think you can do it? And can you measure whether you actually did it or not? Right? So that you know whether you actually accomplished your thing. And so in the context of the conversations that we just had, I encourage you all to just think and on your piece of paper, just write down one SMART goal for yourself of something that you will do this year. And again, make it time bound. So give yourself a reasonable window within which you think you can do this thing so that you'll know when it's done. But give yourself one SMART goal to help build a skill, to help learn more about a career of interest, to, take a class, look into a certificate, add a certain task to your research so that you can get better at that task and that skill, whatever the thing is. And I'll give you a minute to write that down. Okay, awesome. Well, hopefully you all got a chance to write yourself sort of one goal for this year that you're going to try to do around your career. Right. So what are some other things that you can do to have similar conversations and to give yourself a little bit of accountability? One thing that you might think about is that this is just a sort of a quick self-reflection exercise, but there are a bunch of other types of self-assessment that might be useful to you in thinking about the things you like to do, the kind of skills you like to use, the kind of stuff you care about. Some of these our Career Center does. Some of these you can access online. Things like Strengths Finders, MBTI is short for the Myers-Briggs, something with a T, something with an I forget what those stand for. That's the Myers-Briggs test. So when people talk about them being, you know, an NFJ or a whatnot, if they're extroverted versus introverted. And then there's also the strong interest inventory, which can be useful in a career context. So it can give you other tools to look at the things that interest you and that you're passionate about. I also encourage you to really engage your network, talk to your mentors, talk to people that you just like know about careers, particularly if there's ones that you might know less about. Maybe they're not sort of the standard academic career that we all think we know. You know, you never know who who knows someone who knows someone. And that's a great way to really learn more about careers. Do an informational interview, find someone who actually has that job, talk to them about it. Everybody loves to talk about themselves. So it's actually pretty easy to set up an informational interview. Right, so talk to people about careers, talk to people about the skills that you need and ways to build them. And then you can use some of the IDP tools that I mentioned earlier. Like I said, I'm going to be doing this 2-hour version of the workshop that does a little bit of a deeper dive into some of the self-assessment that we did. It's coming up on October 19th. You sign up for that. It's on the grad school calendar. And there's a link here. I'll share the slides. The other way that you can do it is through our PhD Career Ladder program, or PCLP, which it's a program actually that was started by graduate students here at Stony Brook that we've been able to continue with the help of an NSF grant that's helped us expand it. And again, these are graduate student-led career exploration groups, and the groups are all small, and it's grad students only, so that it's a chance for you to sort of have similar conversations to what you just did in your breakout room. In a way that we're not worrying about, you know, our PIs judging our careers or our families weighing in necessarily. It's just about you and what interests you and how, and it gives you a framework to do some of these kinds of things, to do some career exploration, to do some informational interviews. That's step 3, to learn how to and practice crafting a resume that is customized to a particular job in the career you're interested in, and set some goals. So it's similar to this broader IDP process, but it meets during the academic year. It's a class, it's a 0-credit class, GRD 510, meets for an hour and a half every other week. And we actually still have a couple of spots left on Wednesday and on Thursday, if any of you have time and are interested in pursuing that. But we offer 4 or 5 groups every semester, and we offer a couple of groups over the summer. So you'll always have a chance to take it at some point. And our current goal is basically that we think every graduate student at Stony Brook should take it at some point. And this is just my contact information. And, you know, all of our events and things like that are in the graduate school calendar. You can find the professional development stuff at grad.stonybrook.edu professional development. And I will stop there and see if y'all have any more questions. So Thomas, publish a paper in a scientific journal. Is that a SMART goal for you? If so, I would recommend giving yourself a timeline by when you think you might be able to have it submitted, for example. Or maybe, you know, pin down the journal in particular that you have in mind, or, you know, give yourself a milestone that will take you closer to achieving that goal. Okay, awesome. Any questions? I know we're at our 1 hour mark. It's 1 o'clock, so I want to respect everyone's time because I know you're all very busy.
You mentioned a little bit earlier, there was like a professional development fund that was from, was it PhD Works, My PhD Works?
Yes, let me drop the link in the chat.
Awesome.
I think I made my website even, I think I even updated. I just realized I haven't like emailed it out to the programs yet, so I probably should
Yeah.
do that.
Is that different from the one that comes from the Graduate Student Union for
Yes, so the
professional? Okay.
GSO has tons of money. In fact, the GSO gave us the money for this program too.
Okay.
So depending on the kind of professional development you want to do, there's actually lots of sources of money. What's unique about ours is that it only pays for things that basically have nothing at all to do with your dissertation or your thesis. So if you need to go to like a conference or you need to go do field work or go to an archive or something like that, they have lots of other programs for that. Ours is really for you to broaden your career horizons. So like we funded, there's actually some examples on the website if you want to get some ideas, but we funded a lot of Coursera courses, like a lot of people who wanted to build like a data science skills or get a data science certificate. We funded travel for people to go on internships, although there's also a separate internship fund with the GSO. We funded someone to take a doula class. She was going to become a doula. So a bunch of different things. And it's the kind of thing where like, depending on how many people apply each semester, we'll have another call in the spring. Like so long as you follow the rules and you're eligible, you'll get it. And so then we, you know, if there's too many people, then we reduce the amount of the award and everyone gets the same amount. It's one of those things. But if you think you're going to do something, take advantage of it because otherwise the money's just sitting there and we never get that many applicants in the fall. God, I do have to email this out. Okay, my pleasure. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you all for coming today. I hope that this was a little bit useful for you. If you want to do more of this, please do think about joining PCLP or coming to my workshop on October 19th. And again, it's a lot of sort of graduate student to graduate student types of conversations about this stuff because you're not alone. I guess at the end of the day is you're not alone in thinking and wondering about a lot of these things. And it's much more fun and much easier to do together. So. All righty. Thanks so much.
Thank you.